everybody, and welcome to the EAA Pilot Proficiency Center. I'm thrilled to see that this room is packed. It's going to be, I think, an SRO crowd, and Taylor does this every time. He packs them in. I got one seat there, one seat there. There are a few seats left if you want to grab them. If not, there's, I guess, standing room in the back. So. Just real quickly, before I know you're not here to listen to me, you're here to listen to Taylor, just some notes that I do want to tell you, okay? Tech Talks are held here every day, actually starting at 8 o'clock with AOPA. Tomorrow, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, there'll be an AOPA talk at 8 o'clock. Then the regular schedule is at 9 o'clock. The schedule is now posted just outside the doors that you came in. To the right is a whole list of the schedules. You can go also to the EAA app. You can go into the program. You can find a list of Tech Talks that we'll be doing here throughout the week. The Tech Talks are eligible for Wings credit. And at the back of each projector, and I see the last group took a bunch of them. I'm going to put more cards here. There's a blue card that will be on the backs of the projectors, also on a table outside of the door. When you go out the door, just go to that first booth or table that you see. You can get these cards. At the end of the program, we're going to project a slide that has a number on it. On the card is a place to write the number. All you millennials will take pictures, and even the old farts who know not how to use a cell phone will take a picture of that number. Go to the website. The card has the instructions on how to go to FAAsafety.gov. Follow the instructions, enter that number, and you will get Wings credit for this program and every other program that we are running here this week. Next door is in the room behind you. We have 14 Redbird LD simulators plus a crosswind trainer that this guy is the absolute expert on, and a simulator that demonstrates kind of real-time weather latency. These are available free. All you have to do is sign up to register to fly that. The wait can be anywhere from a half an hour to sometimes maybe 2 hours, depends how busy we are. Shouldn't be usually much more than an hour. They're free. We have 14 IFR scenarios, 14 VFR scenarios, and they're for every level of pilot, from student pilot to multi-thousand-hour ATP. The purpose of this is to show pilots how effective simulation can be in improving and maintaining your proficiency. We've got scenarios that are approaches down to minimums, partial panel approaches. We've got short field landings, narrow field landings, high altitude, high DA takeoffs and landings. Just a world of experience to be had. Please go register and fly them. They are free. We've yet to see someone not come out thrilled with their experience that they've had. The last thing that I'll say before I have to hand this over to Taylor is that the EAA, IMC, and VMC Club has a booth. They are one of the sponsors of this project. They have their booths across Celebration Way in the EAA Welcome Center. So if you're interested in IMC or VMC clubs, just step over to the Welcome Center. So enough about me. I would like to present Taylor Albrecht is going to give you a seminar on Mastering Crosswinds. And I gotta say, if I could, just a couple quick words there. And the other day, there's this incredible crosswind trainer in here. I've got literally thousands and thousands and thousands of hours. And I like to think I'm a fairly good pilot. Don't all of us think we're fairly good? You know, someone's gonna say, oh, I'm a bad pilot. You know? I thought I was pretty good, and I've landed in some pretty nasty crosswinds, ugly, serious stuff. I went and did some training with Taylor. Oh my gosh, did I learn a bunch from Taylor. So folks, without further ado, Taylor Albrecht, Mastering Crosswinds.
Thanks a bunch, It's great to be here. And this blows me away every year, because I want to know, in this crowd, who has seen me do this before? Anybody? Good. I've got a mostly new, that's good. So you hopefully won't be bored. This is the Mastering Crosswinds seminar. If you're in the wrong seminar, you just go out the gate over there and find your, anyway. When we get started here, first thing, this is a reminder for me. Put your cell phones on stun or off, please. Thank you. And are there any questions before we get going? Excellent. Okay. So, I want to know, who are you people anyway? How many private pilots are in the crowd? Okay, a whole bunch of them. How many commercial pilots? Good. How about some ATPs? Okay, excellent.
How about sport?
Sport, okay, sport. Wait a minute. Hold on. How many are tailwheel endorsed? Excellent. You guys know how to handle crosswinds, then? You're just here to go to sleep or something. I don't know. Okay. How many glider guys? Excellent, excellent. Okay. Now, how many students? Why isn't every hand up in this room? Right? We're all student pilots. Okay. On a scale of 1 to 10, I want you to think about your confidence if you're coming up against maybe not the maximum crosswind, but crosswind operations, okay? 1 being I'm not at all confident, 10 being I'm so confident I don't even need to listen to it. So, how many of you would say I'm kind of 1 to 4? Great. How about 5 to 7? Excellent. Good diversity. How about 8 to 10? Okay. A few of you? Excellent. So we asked this question before training, and then we ask it after training. And the beauty of it is that this will go up, and that's what I want to see, because a lot of the crosswind problem is up here. You can actually do this, guys. So, we're going to look at a crosswind landing video. I'm going to tell you a little bit about why this is a problem. Then we'll go into aviating with them, and if we've got some time, we can do some questions and answers. See if it'll go. aileron down.
That's the question. This is pretty close. Not the end of the runway. That's pretty much
I like that because there's a lot of examples on how not to do crosswinds, right? So, first thing is looking at the problem. Why do we have a problem? We're looking at loss of control on the ground. This is a graph of accidents. It was year 2000, but it pretty much holds true year over year. That this is the number of accidents, and across the bottom is the wind velocity, the crosswind component velocity. And if you look at this, you'll find about 90% of the accidents are with a crosswind component of less than 10 knots. Okay? So whose personal maximum is greater than 10 knots? Quite a few. We don't know how to land, even in light winds. So, what else? Well, Richard Collins said it's the most difficult thing to do in aviation. It acquires assertive control, especially if you're in gusty and turbulent conditions. You need to be stomping on those rudder pedals to maintain alignment with the runway center line. You need to be moving those ailerons around to maintain a bank angle. So it requires quick reactions. You've got to have great visual skill. And of course, when you're over the runway, there's little time to succeed, and if you don't, it can be pretty expensive. Okay? There's a real big problem. One of the issues is you gotta fly while you're touching the surface of the earth. But we have a problem with something called negative transfer of learning. That means we do something, and when we try to do something else, what we've learned in the one thing is really bad for the other. So, example, I have a crosswind from the, well, first of all, does anybody in here drive a car? Yeah, okay, I thought so. So, think about this. I've got a crosswind from the left. In order to line up with the runway, I push right rudder and I've got left bank angle using the aileron. So my wheel is turned to the left. Now I touch down. My steering now laterally is with my feet. So let's say that I start going to the right. What do? I start going to the left. What do? I turn to the right. Right? No, that's the worst thing you can do. That could take you off the runway. But that's what we do in a car. So it's really hard to break that habit. It's kind of a, are there any CFIs in the room? Okay. They may get up and walk out in a second. We'll see. But anyway, it's their worst nightmare, right? You do the best crosswind approach landing, right? You're going along and you go, whew, it's over. No, you got to keep flying that thing until it's tied down. Tail wheel guys know. You're flying the airplane until you tie it down. Take that, you tricycle guys, because you're doing the same thing, especially in a high wind situation. Okay, so the gentleman that invented the X-Wind trainer device did a survey. And what he did, he does the same thing we do. On a scale of 1 to 10, although I think he used 100, where's your crosswind confidence? What certificate do you have? And then he plotted it. Then he administered a 26-question quiz on crosswind theory. Okay? And so the test score is along the bottom, and the confidence level is the vertical axis. So you think, okay, this follows a pretty normal progression. This is student pilot, private pilot, commercial. I think I have sport, private, commercial, CFI, ATP. So the ATPs did really well on the theory, and they're really confident. And that makes sense. They've got so much experience. The problem is, that's CFIs. They're really, really confident, but they don't quite know what the theory's like. Okay, that's none of you guys in the room, of course, but overall. And this is a scary thing because they're teaching crosswinds. Okay, so when we are trying to get crosswind practice, if you, the inventor argues with me, he says you get 5 seconds of practice. I made it 20. So when we get our private pilot certificate, which of course we do our check ride on the strongest, windiest day to prove to the DPE we can do it, right? Of course not. We have about less than 5 minutes when we get our certificate. And the high ratings, commercial, even ATPs, I can teach something with this. Can't make it, you gotta have the perfect wind, you have to have the perfect runway, the perfect instructor to get the right practice. And think about it, would you go out and just hit a bucket of balls and then go play against Tiger Woods? Maybe a bad example right now, but okay. What do we have this mysterious rudder for? To counteract adverse yaw. That's why we've got it. It's not to steer the nose, right? It's to so that we're coordinated in our turns. So when we are turning the airplane, the FAA answer to the question, what causes an airplane to turn? The horizontal component of lift. So, we've got a horizontal component and it's opposed by centrifugal force. When those two are in balance, we've got a coordinated turn. If we go into a steep turn, enough of that horizontal or that vertical vector is being pushed horizontally that we have to pull back on the stick in order to maintain altitude, right? And what does that do? Increases the angle of attack, creating lift. Now, when I was in my private pilot training, my instructor, who was very good by the way, said, ball in the middle, be coordinated, ball in the middle, all the time, right? Then he goes, oh, well we're gonna do a crosswind approach and landing, and now you need to be cross-controlled to do it right. And I'm like, what are you talking about? You're telling me this is so totally dangerous that I might die. Well, we're looking at this, and it's this turn, this skidding turn, that is the bad cross control, not a slip, right? Where might we encounter a skidding turn? Base to final. We're way up high, right? And we get into a spin and we can recover easily. No, that's why this thing is so dangerous. So I was looking at it a little bit more and I wanted to see, well, why is it so dangerous? And I ran across this video, thanks to the Canadians, that I want you to see.
One of the most common upset scenarios a pilot can find themselves in is a stall spin while turning base to final. Unlike upsets that take place outside of the pilot's control, such as those caused by weight turbulence, a stall spin usually happens because of the pilot's lack of control or over-control. Let's take a look at a typical scenario. Perhaps due to an unexpected crosswind or pilot fatigue, rather than turning onto the extended center line on final, the aircraft overshoots the runway, and it's here an otherwise uneventful flight goes terribly wrong. Rather than simply abort the approach and overshoot, the pilot tries to bring the nose of the aircraft around by pushing inside rudder. In a matter of only a few seconds, the mishandling of the controls causes the aircraft to roll quickly to the inside of the turn and into a low-level spin with tragic consequences. Seems improbable? How can a properly licensed pilot so poorly handle the controls so as to induce a spin at low level? Yet the statistics show that over and over this scenario continues to be one of the biggest killers among general aviation pilots. So let's take a look at the aerodynamic forces in more detail. The aircraft is on the base leg about to turn final. We know that as the aircraft slows, we're significantly closer to critical angle of attack than we were during cruise. During the turn to final, the pilot overshoots the extended center line of the runway. The exact cause of this is irrelevant. However, what is important to note is that the pilot generally stops rolling at around 30 to 45 degrees angle of bank, as that's the maximum bank many pilots are comfortable with. The pilot notices that the aircraft is still not lined up on final despite his efforts. Having reached the maximum comfort level for angle of bank, the pilot begins to push the rudder to the inside of the turn in an attempt to bring the nose around and point it towards the runway. Aerodynamically, this does nothing to help the pilot. In fact, all it does is begin to couple yaw and roll together and begin the process of inputting pro-spin controls. Yaw acts in an ear-to-ear movement relative to the pilot. Since the aircraft is now in a 45-degree angle of bank, pushing inside rudder does not bring the nose around, rather it causes it to drop down. To counter the nose drop, the pilot begins to add back or up elevator. This increases the angle of attack and the G-loading on the aircraft. The earlier input of yaw also has the effect of inducing secondary roll. To counter the increasing angle of bank, the pilot uses opposite aileron. The aileron on the inner wing now goes down in an attempt to increase lift on the inner wing and stop the inside roll. While this may seem like a slow, steady progression, in reality it happens in only a few seconds. The pilot has unknowingly pulled the aircraft into a stall, and because of the pro-spin control inputs, has coupled yaw and roll together, creating the perfect case for an accelerated stall spin. Learning these concepts on the ground and having an understanding of how and why the stall spin happens is a great and necessary first step to avoiding this deadly mistake. Receiving proper training to avoid and then recover your aircraft in various upset scenarios will go a long way to getting you back on the ground safely. Remember, a go-around is always an option, and in many cases the best one. But taking an extra 5 minutes to fly a circuit costs very little compared to the cost of writing off an aircraft and the lives of those aboard.
So that really helped me understand, especially the thing about when you're in that bank, what does the rudder do? It doesn't point you this way, it points you down. And then we're just naturally going to try and counter those forces with the wrong inputs. So the key takeaway here is if you're going to overshoot the runway center line, go around. Don't try and salvage it. In fact, how many of you guys are ready to go around on every approach with your hand on the throttle and it's in your head? Okay? Yeah, I need every hand in this room up, okay? Because the go-around right now, if you read the magazines and see some seminars, we are failing in our go-around, right? And it's because we're not practicing it enough. So, because if you practice something, like we come into the crosswind trainer, and we practice it, what does it become? Muscle memory, sort of rote, and it's not the adrenaline rush that you get if you're just about ready to touch down and that coyote comes across the runway. So it just becomes a normal thing, no big deal. And in some of the airplanes, if you're flying high performance turbo singles, you know, you can get that torque roll if you're too fast on that throttle. So you want to be practicing that maneuver. Please go out, practice it about every other time that you go up. Practice it in different phases of that approach. And that way it'll become rote, no big deal anymore. So that was my soapbox. All right, what about crosswind concepts now? I used to think, wow, this would be cool. I got a 30 knot direct down the runway wind. Why is total wind important? Well, this graph on the left is showing the wind velocity, and on the bottom is showing the angular difference between the flight. And if you look here, 30 knots with a 0 degree angle is cool, right? In a 172, what are you doing, about 25 knots when you touch down? The problem becomes that all of a sudden now, I've got to get off the runway. And most of those taxiway turns are 90 degrees, right? So I've been in this good zone here, and I'm coming way out here to the danger zone. Okay? So it's critical that you aviate while you're on the ground, especially during heavy wind situations. When you do that, if with a tricycle gear aircraft, well, I think I have this coming up. No, I don't. You know that ugly taxi diagram that's in the FAA books? It says you've got an airplane and it's got the winds coming from the different, and it says something like you want to have your left aileron or your elevator neutral and left aileron and this and that, right? I can't remember that. I need simple. Okay, so tricycle gear airplane. How do you position the flight controls? In wind, taxi. To remember it, you turn into a quartering headwind and you dive away from a quartering tailwind. Much easier to remember. If you're flying a tailwheel aircraft, it's slightly different, but don't do this in a tricycle gear. Tailwheel is climb into a quartering headwind. That's the only difference. And all you have to do is think, well, that tail wheel is what's helping them steer, so you want as much pressure as you can on that wheel. Same thing with the nose wheel for us tricycle gear guys. Okay, how many of you estimate your crosswind component on every approach? Ah, I love that. Have you been to my seminar? Okay, yeah, well, that's good. We're all students. Okay, so again, I need something that's easy to remember this. And you should, how are you going to set a personal maximum for wind and crosswind component if you're not looking at what you're doing now and comparing? So, this is what I do. I use the phrase 30 degrees is half. 30 degrees. Okay, everybody say it with me. You ready? 30 degrees is half. What does that mean? If the wind is 30 degrees off the runway course, exactly 1/2 of the velocity is crosswind component. Isn't that easy? Cool. 30 degrees is half. I can take that one, do the math very quickly, and compare, well, okay, how's that go with my personal maximum today? Okay. The next thing to think is 60 degrees off the runway course, all of that component is crosswind. This is all math. How many of you love trigonometry, right? Okay. It's trigonometry, and mathematically exactly 30 degrees, exactly half. At 60, it's about 90%. So that's close enough for me. All right? If you don't like that method, that's fine. There are all kinds of different ways to do it. So if you look over here, this came out of the FAA book. You know, the red area there, 60 degrees, danger. Right? How many of you guys know about mastery flight training? Okay? Go to Mastery Flight Training and sign up for Flying Lessons Weekly. Thomas Turner, who's very active, I think he's in the National Flight Instructor Hall of Fame and stuff. This is one of the best electronic published things that you can get. And this is how he does it. So it's just using that grid to figure out what's good, what's marginal, what's bad. Just do it, though, on each approach to get used to it. Okay? It's called Flying Lessons Weekly, masteryflight.com, I believe it is. Okay. Well, what if the wind is 40 or 50 degrees? How am I going to figure out what that crosswind, how does it increase? We say use the rule of sixths. For every 10 degrees the wind is off runway course, The crosswind component is about a 6. Okay, so at 10 degrees, 1/6. 20, a third. 20, 30 degrees is half. Okay, and then on up. If you practice this, after a while, you get a real good ballpark. Now, is it important that we know the crosswind component to the knot? No.
No.
It changes all the time. Also, think about this. Where do we get wind information? ATIS, AWOS, tower, wind sock. Good. Me like that. Yeah. Okay. So, guess what? It's all history, isn't it? Right? It's not telling you what's going on right now in that atmosphere. We have a thing that we can do to tell us that, though, that I'll reveal in a little bit. But we need to have a little practice with this calculation of crosswind component, okay? So I'm flying into Astoria, Oregon. Is anybody from Astoria? No. Has anybody been to Astoria? Cool. All right. It's usually not too many out here. So anyway, that's the airport, the SOC. And this is what you get on a METAR. So how many of you fly with ForeFlight? Any ADS-B? Okay. So you got a display, and this is what you're getting. So the winds are 230 at 18 gusts to 30. Does that give anybody a little pucker factor? It does me. All right. Our available runways are runway 8 and 26, or 1331. Which runway do I want? How many say 26? Okay, everybody's right. All right, so what is the crosswind component? Okay, so everybody say this with me again. Ready? 30 degrees is half. All right. When you're doing this, if you're flying in on an approach, or you're coming into an airport area or whatever, and you get the ATIS, say 30 degrees is half out loud. Just don't have the mic button keys. All right. So, don't go for the lower number, okay? Go for the higher. It's 15. That's what I'm planning for, is a 15 knot crosswind component, right? What about magnetic variation, guys? Okay. A METAR is a printed weather report. Printed weather reports give you wind direction based on true north, right? So, this hasn't been adjusted. And the reason I'm going to Astoria is there's 16 degrees east. So, remember, east is least, west is best. You probably learned that now. So we need to pull about 15 degrees off. And all of a sudden, I've got about 3/4 of that velocity. So I've gone from 15 knots, which might be my personal maximum, or my, I can do this no matter what, up to 22 and a half. Okay, because I relied on a printed weather report. Keep that in mind, and it's great cocktail party fodder for knowing that. Any printed weather report. Now, if Tower gives it to you, if you call the AWOS, you're getting the AWOS transmission. They've adjusted it for Magnar. And it's really only super important on the coast if you're flying on the coast. All right, so that was fun. Everybody have a good time so far? All right, let's see. We got some, oh, okay, there we go. All right, so now I'll give you some tips. We're gonna, the number one most important tip that you take away from here is point your nose with your toes. Point your nose with your toes. Okay, everybody say this one with me. Ready? Point your nose with your toes. What's it mean? You know, we've got to line up with the runway center line, but we've got a crosswind. So I have to take that nose and line it up. I need to point it down the runway center line. How do I do it? With my toes, my rudder, okay? Rudder is most important to line up. We're going to use this side slip or wing load method of approach to landing. And that is primary, because tip number 2 didn't come up the way I thought. I apologize, I'm even confusing myself. I'll give you tip number 2 in a second, because I want to talk about craft, okay? An airplane loves craft, right? It's such a stable flight condition. I prefer Dungeness myself, but it's stable. I'm just holding the wings level. And it does a couple of things for me in a crosswind approach. The first thing is, okay, so my nose is pointing in the wind. If I have a left crosswind, my nose is pointing to the left. I'm going to point my nose with my toes. Which rudder am I going to use? Right rudder. And that's because I've started out in a crab, and I know which way the nose is pointing in the runway. So, then we have 2 kinds of slips. The first is a forward slip. In a forward slip, you take and you press the rudder down to go away from the flight path you desire. And what do? To stay on the path, you bank towards it. When do we use a forward slip? Want to lose altitude. So if you're high on final, anywhere in there, if you got to get down below a cloud deck, things like that. I had an instructor who wanted to really push this point with me. And he made me fly about 30 nautical miles in a 172, full forward slips the whole way. My legs were on fire, but he made a point, right? Well, we were full throttle in that 172 to maintain altitude, but the bird still flies. So you can use this as a great technique, but what about the side slip? In a side slip, what we're going to do is we're going to press the rudder down to point the nose in the direction we want to travel. And then to maintain our lateral position, we've got to bank. Which brings me to number 2. Bank angle controls your lateral position. Okay, bank angle provides the offsetting force so that when you're using rudder to point to the runway, that you don't just drift way off into the sunset. Bro, if I had to use right rudder to line up, I'm going to bank to the left. And that's going to give me a side slip. The idea is to have the longitudinal axis of the airplane in line with the center line without any sort of crab angle. And then, so you don't know the bank angle that's going to keep you from going left and right until you've really adjusted this rudder pressure down the runway. So we want to lead into this slip with rudder. We got to start a roll, but the roll isn't lead, okay? So bank for lateral position. So here's what we do. I say in the sim, point your nose with your toes, opposite bank. Point your nose with your toes, opposite bank. What I'll do in the sessions, in our long session, is I'll have a right crosswind. Which rudder do I need? Left rudder, right bank. Right? So I'm doing this. We're going from a crab across this never-ending runway to a side slip. Okay? And then, and I purposefully do this. I tell them right rudder, left bank. Okay, Go wing low, right rudder, left bank. Go wing low, right rudder, left bank. Go wing low. Okay? And now they're doing this right rudder, left bank thing. Now I turn the wind around. Guess what happens? Right rudder, left bank, and it should be the other way, right? And this is where I make the point. This phrase will not fail you. Point your nose with your toes, opposite bank. That will set you up for a proper side slip. I had a student argue with me once. He said, I've got to know which way you're dialing the wind is. And I said, no, you don't. Right? Point your nose with your toes. Left rudder, right bank, right rudder, left bank. It will never fail you on that. So, number 3. I already mentioned this, but fly the airplane, don't land it. Be ready to go around, hand on the throttle. In fact, put your head landing is only an option. Okay? Because if you're up in strong crosswinds, the likelihood that you're going to have to go around increases quite a bit, doesn't it? All right. Oh, here's where I did the taxi diagram. This is fun. Okay. Use up aileron on right-hand wing and neutral elevation. Well, I can't remember that. And if I'm under pressure, I got a jet behind me taxiing. I want to get out of his way. I'm not going to remember that, but I am going to remember turn into and dive away from. Now, I've had folks go, you know, when I turn, when I make that turn on it, I lose all sense of where the wind's coming from. That's what that thing is for, right? We almost all have that if we're flying steam gauges, and this is a perfect thing to show you how to position your controls. So just overlay that. All right, we've got these phases to landing. Final approach. They say what? A good approach may result in a good landing, but a bad approach probably won't, right? So final approach is critical. Then we're going to talk to round out, hit the flare, touchdown, and then after landing roll, which is a high-speed taxi. Okay, now here we go, we're going to get into a debate. There are 2 main ways to consider a crosswind approach landing. The first one is called, well, they're called wing low and crab and kick. Okay? So, I don't know if I want to go here. How many of you guys do the crab and kick? Good. I want to get 0 hands down there unless you're flying the ATPs. People are flying tons of hours in their airplane. I like to say that they have become one when you're in the airplane. Right? Wing low is a stabilized approach. What I do is I start out in a crab, right? Crab is very stable. And then I'm going to put in the side slip. I'm going to destabilize the aircraft aerodynamically while I put in that side slip. And then I'm going to be stable very quickly. Okay? And so it's stabilized aerodynamically. I can teach this to all pilots, even non-pilots. Pilots of all skill and ability. And the visual cues are constant. So you see a 5's in the room. You teach an aiming point. It's on the windshield, on the runway. If that aiming point moves around, then you're making small corrections to adjust for that. If you're crabbing all the way down to the runway, you're over here, you don't have a good aiming point. In a side slip, it doesn't change. Okay. Now, in the crab and kick, it is wonderfully stabilized until you're about 5 feet above the ground, and then you mess it all up. It's really difficult. The visual cues we just talked about, if you're a pilot flying all the time, it's fine. If you're flying Part 135 charter with a big executive in the back, you're probably going to do a crab and kick, but you know how to do it. as instructors, please teach the wing load method first. As students, insist that your instructor teach it so that you learn that first. Because even if you've been away for 2-3 months or 6 months from flying, you go out, you have a crosswind, you can do this. It's easy. Okay? All right. Another soapbox. How many of those are there? All right. Recommended approach, make it a little longer. So on your final approach, give yourself an extra quarter mile or so. Because we're going to start out in a craft to have a look at, what do I have going on here? But we're going to make it a little higher as well. We've got a high drag maneuver or higher drag maneuver and a side slip. And it also helps you observe better. So you might need, if you needed to get down through a turbulent layer, you can fairly quickly. All kinds of things there to consider. Faster. Okay, so Cessna 172s commonly add half the gust factor, okay, to the approach speed. Whatever your manual says is what you should do. Commonly, also, well, we'll add 5 knots to the approach speed. That's to protect you against gusts and having a stalled condition on short flight. But when you land, when you roll out and flare, do not land faster. Okay, these things, the tricycle gear airplanes, they suck as high-speed tricycles, right? So you want to dissipate as much energy as you can before you touch down. I still want to hear the stall horn and the squeak of the wheel. Okay? Flaps, minimum necessary for field length. Okay? That's in the Cessna book. So if I were landing on runway 36 here in a 172, what flap setting do I need? Nothing. 0. Okay? You might, and we're going to consider a go-around, because a go-around as a maneuver is like what? It's a takeoff. Configure the airplane for takeoff. So 182, takeoff flaps are 10 degrees, 1 knot. Configure it for that. And that way you're configured, ready to go to get away from the surface of the earth as quickly as you can. Okay? Can I get you at the end? The Cirrus is kind of an interesting aircraft. It has 2 flap settings. Anybody fly Cirrus here? Okay? So you have 50% and 100%. How do you configure for takeoff? 50%. How do you configure for landing according to the book? 100%. Okay, but I won't do it in a strong one. I still want to be ready. You know, I hate that sinking feeling of that full flat to the next one. Anyway, when you are coming into the flare, now everything's normal. Don't change anything from what you would normally do with a 0 or light wind landing. The only difference is that you're on one cheek a little bit more, okay? Your focal point will transition down the runway a bit. You'll go into the flare. You'll increase those flight control positions because they're becoming less effective, okay? If you're kind of over the runway and it's turbulent, you're rocking and rolling and you find yourself banking downwind, abandon the approach because you'll be off the runway so fast that you're just not going to be successful. And that's kind of what that roundout looks like from an old FAA book. I love those books. Okay, touching down, upwind main first, downwind main, nose gear. Kind of a fun little deal. How many of you are flying steerable nose wheel airplanes? Okay, they're kind of fun because in a strong crosswind, you might have quite a bit of rudder pressure down. And if that nose wheel is canted with that rudder, when it touches down, you're going to experience what we call the dart, right? It'll start off in that direction. So you want to be aware of that you might end up with that dart and relax that rudder just as that nose wheel comes down. The Cirrus and other free castering nose wheel airplanes are a lot easier. And then, full aileron deflection into the wind. Never relax. If you relax, you're setting yourself up for failure. Don't relax. You're also going to need to taxi, right? Slow taxi. And the thing about that is, now you've got to change those flight controls to turn into or dive away. By the way, if the wind is 5 or 7 knots, do you need to do that control thing in a tricycle gear airplane? Probably not. How about do it to develop a habit, right? So think about doing that. There's the touchdown. After landing, I've had guys tell me, when it's really strong, I line up on the downwind side of the runway and fly to the upwind side, and I say, quit that. They think that that's going to reduce the crosswind component significantly enough that it makes a difference. Guess which side most runway excursions take place? Upwind side. I weather vane into the wind. That vector becomes stronger, and so now I'm headed that way anyway, and now I'm going to weather vane into it. So, full deflection, don't brake too much. How about crosswinds and runway contamination? No! Okay, wet runways. I was being told a story earlier this week of a well-experienced instructor pilot who landed on a runway with a strong crosswind, and they were hydroplaning. Can we control direction when we're hydroplaning? No. Ice, in the video, that was, I think, Dusseldorf. And the reason I had airliner guys is to see how much snow that they were kicking up. So, errors drifting from base, actually drifting anywhere in the pattern. If you're not compensating for that crosswind and it's blowing you into the runway, what are you setting yourself up for? A stall spin because of a skidding turn. So, okay, unstabilized. At some point, you guys should be saying, hey, if this isn't working out, I'm going to go around. Got to watch your speed. Okay, probably have a little more power than normal because of the side slip to maintain the proper descent rate. Too much airspeed, slow down, and then really relaxing the flight controls is a big issue. So, too much braking, right, causing a skid. Go around, I already did this. Go ahead, do it, off. Now one thing, how many of you are flying twins? Okay, not too many. Retractable gear airplanes? Okay, so one of the things is that if you go around in a retract, you know, a lot of times it's power up, pitch up, positive rate, flaps up, gear up, typically. I'm saying you might want to leave the gear down. A lot of gear up landings have resulted from a missed or a go around because you're out of that routine and you forget to bring it down again. So, set net personal minimums, maximums. This is something out of the Cirrus flight manual. There's plenty of stuff available on the FAA website to help you set those weather max and mins, and wind is definitely one of them. How do you do this? Practice in the air, grab a CFI, do some forward slips. I recommend 30 nautical miles. Do the forward slip, never do a forward slip to a landing unless you've got an instructor first, because man, when you come out of that high drag maneuver, if you're not doing it right and have that good feel for the airplane, it's going to be, my instructor would say, this is Mr. Toad's wild ride. You said it way too much with me. Go along a runway or a road and practice these above the runway without any intention of landing. Okay? I had a flight review with a great instructor earlier this year, and one of the things he had me do was just be slow over the runway, just maintaining minimum speed in that slip, and we never touched down. It was great practice. Okay? Now, Redbird Flight Sim created this beautiful flight simulator, Crosswind trainer, really. And it's the best thing I've ever seen. I really latched onto it, developed a training program around it, and we have one here in the Pilot Proficiency Center. There are a few of them nationally, mostly with the flight universities, but if you can find one, or if you own a flight school, come talk to me, because these things are the best things since sliced bread. No pressure, no prop turning, no ATC. You get to concentrate on point your nose with your toes, opposite bank. We got all kinds of things we can do with it. So it helps you keep the muscle memory going. Our program that we did, we probably run 300 pilots through it before. And the biggest thing is, remember I asked you how confident you are? Okay? We asked that before and after. So the green line is before. We had a lot of people, right around a 4, and after about a 7. This is the confidence thing. Understanding the concepts behind it, and that we start with 15 knots of crosswind component. People are sweating, and they're like, oh, that was easy. So, fun stuff. And these are the key landing tips. I went too much. Pull out your cameras. Technology has just changed everything. And go ahead, point your nose with your toes. 30 degrees is that. Say them, they're fun to say. And then, if you want to get hold of me, this is my contact info. And lastly is the wings session number for today is the top one.
Can I mention just a thing about that, Taylor? Taylor Albrecht, who is just the master of Mastering Crosswinds.